Today, we are going to talk about the history of both Chinese and Korean immigrants to the United States, as well as how they formed Chinatown in San Francisco and Koreatown in Los Angeles.
These immigrants were essential to the success of the U.S. economy and society as a whole, bringing their culture, skills, and work ethic to help make America into the melting pot that it is today. Both Koreatown and Chinatown hold significance in the Asian American community and have gone through many trials to get to where they are today. First, we are going to go deeper into the history of Chinese immigrant workers in San Francisco. Chinese immigrants came to the United States in the late 1840s and 1850s, eagerly wanting to leave the economic chaos in China and try their luck during the California Gold Rush. At the time, the Chinese were recruited to work on the transcontinental railroad system. Railroad companies were looking for workers to exploit for cheap labor. Railroad workers faced hard working conditions and were put in hazardous environments. As the gold rush continued, people began to see immigrants as a threat to their gold. The strength of anti-Chinese sentiment increased among other workers in the American economy. They began taxing the Chinese for mining rights. Eventually, this forced the Chinese to leave in pursuit of other low-wage jobs. Now, a huge part of Chinese immigration history is the Chinese Exclusion Act. The Chinese Exclusion Act was passed by Congress in 1882, where it was the first federal law that restricted immigration based on just nationality, and this lasted 10 years. This act banned all Chinese immigrants besides diplomats, students, merchants, and teachers. This act prohibited existing immigrants from obtaining citizenship. The act led to many hardships for Chinese immigrants in America. Families were separated as many Chinese men were unable to bring over their families. This affected the development of stable Chinese communities in America. Chinese immigrants weren't able to find high-paying jobs. They faced tons of discrimination and racism. Overall, this was a period of hardship and struggle, but also one of resilience and community building.
Often less well known compared to their Chinese counterparts are Korean immigrants and their experiences coming to the U.S. Unlike Chinese immigrants who came to the United States starting in the 1800s, the first Koreans arrived in America in the early 20th century in Hawaii as plantation workers and students. Similar to the Chinese, Koreans face widespread racial discrimination. Policies like the Immigration Act of 1924 set quotas on immigration from Asian countries, limiting the numbers in which Koreans came to the States. In addition, many Americans held a white supremacist mentality and tried to prevent minority groups from moving into certain areas. It wasn't until the 1960s when Koreans immigrated by the masses, with many settling in California, specifically in Los Angeles. Between 1960 to 1980, the number of Koreans in the U.S. soared from 11,000 to 290,000, making them one of the largest ethnic groups in the country.
I will be talking about the formation of Chinatown in San Francisco. As the influx of Chinese immigrants escalated during the mid-19th century, many settled in San Francisco, especially in the area around DuPont Street, now known as Grant Avenue. This district quickly evolved into what is known today as Chinatown. Chinatown was very important for immigrants as it was a place where they could practice their cultural beliefs without having to face discrimination. It became a vibrant hub, filled with Chinese restaurants, shops, and cultural institutions such as temples and theaters. Chinatown is home to 15 to 30,000 people and spans over 24 blocks. Currently, the Chinatown of San Francisco is one of the largest and the oldest Chinatowns in America. San Francisco's Chinatown has not only preserved the rich heritage of its original settlers, but has also become one of the most famous tourist attractions in the city.
As thousands of Koreans settled in Los Angeles, many were drawn to the downtown area, specifically the region along Olympic Boulevard near Crenshaw and Hoover. Restaurants, churches, businesses, and cultural centers were developed in the area by Korean immigrants, leading to the formation of what we now call Koreatown. It spanned over 2 miles and is home to over 200,000 people, with the highest concentration of Koreans in the world outside of the Korean peninsula. Koreatown's rapid growth can partly be attributed to the relative wealth and affluence that Korean immigrants came with. Unlike other ethnic groups, many Korean immigrants were educated and came from well-off backgrounds, allowing them to use their resources to successfully create their own ethnic enclave in the States. Many Koreans became businessmen, even getting an education in America as early as the 1930s.
One main event that Chinatown lived through was the rise of gang violence. As Chinese immigrants settled in the area, they formed tight-knit communities to navigate the challenges of life in a new country. However, secret societies within the communities known as tongs began to form. These organizations provide support for their members, but over time, some evolve into activities involving gambling, human trafficking, and opium trade. Eventually, it led to the Tong Wars, which spanned between a 70-year period. As some Tongs gained control over criminal enterprises, their power and wealth grew, leading to intense rivalries with other Tongs. Tong Wars were fought using guerrilla warfare, often in the streets and alleys and also on rooftops. The power of Tongs extended beyond physical violence. They controlled jobs, housing, and ran gambling dens and opium parlors. Their influence was so persuasive that even local politicians and police were often bribed to ignore or even protect their activities.
Koreatown has lived through many events in its history, with the most famous being the LA race riots of 1992. In the 1990s, race relations between Korean Americans and African Americans were unsteady. Writer and scholar Kim Kok-chung stated in a journal published by the Oxford University Press that, quote, "The friction between African Americans and Korean Americans was exacerbated by prevailing stereotypes about the two groups. The popular imputations of African Americans as insolent, economically dependent, or violent, and of Asian Americans as hardworking, self-sufficient, and law-abiding, worthy of being named the model minority." In other words, both communities held prejudices about the other, resulting in widespread distrust. Relations between the groups escalated in 1991 when Koreatown store owner Soon Ja-do shot and killed Latasha Harlins, a young black girl. Do suspected Harlins of shoplifting, and the two got into a physical altercation before Harlins was shot. This event incited anger on both sides. Other conflicts involving these two ethnic groups arose throughout the year, adding to the uneasiness that both groups felt. A year later, in 1992, Rodney King, a black man, was brutally assaulted by police officers in Los Angeles after being pulled over. After 4 of the officers were acquitted by a jury, chaos broke out, with riots taking place throughout the city. Much of the violence and destruction was centered near Koreatown. Police stations in the area prioritized defending affluent, predominantly white neighborhoods such as Beverly Hills, leaving lower-income communities like Koreatown to fend for themselves. Over $50 million in damages were caused by the riots, and to defend against rioters and looters, many Korean business owners took to the rooftops. They became known as rooftop Koreans, armed with guns and weaponry. Though no one was fatally shot by the rooftop Koreans, this event showed how Koreatown and the broader LA community were affected by racial tension. Steps were taken by organizations like the KYCC and KIWA to provide relief and assistance for the Korean community. But overall, the LA race riots were a formative event which we can learn from today, showing the negative effects that discrimination and conflict can have on communities.
Today, Chinatown in San Francisco holds significant cultural value with rich historical importance, but more importantly, it provides a narrative for Chinese American heritage. Chinatown is a hub for hundreds of small businesses. Chinatown serves as a living museum as every block has a significant story. Over a fifth of San Franciscans, about 180,000 people, had Chinese roots in 2021. It just goes to show that the city's rich history dates back to the gold rush days. If you go to Chinatown today, you will experience the rich history of Chinese American heritage and culture through food, shops, and the residents of Chinatown.
Korean immigrants have had a large impact on the U.S., from their occupations in the economy to their culture, music, and food that have influenced millions. Today, Koreatown is larger than LA's Little Tokyo and Chinatown combined. It is a hub for businesses and communities. And interestingly, Koreans do not make up the majority of Koreatown's residents. Instead, Latinos compose over 50% of its population. Black Americans also inhabit a small part of the city, showing how different ethnic communities can coexist and unite together in their pursuit for opportunity. If you go to Koreatown today, you can experience the blending of culture through the food, shops, and people that call Koreatown their home.